Okay, I'll call the meeting to order at 7:04. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Allred,
Here?
Mr. Andreessen,
Here.
Mr. Fell, Mr. Hopkins, Ms. McFarland, Mr. Rose,
Here.
Ms. Sims, here. Ms. Yu.
Here.
All right, looks like we have a quorum. Any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay, approval of the minutes. Approval of the minutes from the December 19th, 2024 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any comments on the minutes from that meeting? Are we ready to make a motion? Someone?
I move the minutes be approved.
Motion by Mr. Rose. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Andreessen. Any discussion? Any changes? All right, if not, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes. Communications, do we have any communications?
We do not.
Okay. So we have no continued public hearings, no old business, no new public hearings, no new business, which brings us to audience participation. Give me a second here. Is there anyone who wishes to address the Plan Commission for 5 minutes uninterrupted on a topic of your choice? If so, you can come forward and sign in. I will say that we will allow or ask for public input during our study session portion, where we'll be talking about the new draft comprehensive plan. So if that is what you'd like to provide input on, you're welcome to wait for that. All right, looks like we have no takers. So that brings us to a staff report. Is there a staff report?
Excuse me. I guess as I mentioned last time, the Committee of the Whole had forwarded a recommendation for the Dutch Brothers special use permit to get approved. They approved that with an additional condition, which was essentially that the developer would work with planning staff and with engineering staff to come up with some treatments at the driveway to help make it safer for people walking and biking past that driveway.
All right, sounds good. That brings us to our study session.
Okay, I'm back. I brought a friend. All right, so it's only been a week, but we have managed to get some things further along here. But just to kind of go over, excuse me, I guess my cough isn't completely gone. Just to go over sort of the agenda for tonight, we'll talk about changes we've made since last week. Then we'll get into the draft plan review and comments, and then we want to go over a timeline for adoption, since we've had a little bit of time to sleep on that and put that together. And then we'll talk a bit about what we'll be discussing at next week's meeting. So I guess next week is already March. All right, so since last week, I think it was Dustin's recommendation that we sort of put the street types, or the idea for adding street types sort of into a little move, so that's kind of on our to-do list going forward. So Andrea put that in there under Big Move 6, which seemed the most logical place to put it, which was making walkability a priority. It didn't really seem to fit in anywhere else. So we put it in there, and then we just added sort of a basic metric, which was, have we actually done that, yes or no? So that's how we'll measure, excuse me, measure progress on that. and then we renumbered the metrics for that big move.
Yeah, coincidentally, that big move did have, it wasn't, I think Lou had brought up there were some numbering issues, and that was in Big Move 6, so it was convenient to add one and then renumber at that time. So hopefully we've caught those. I did follow up with Lou. I know he's out of town, but I'd like to meet with him just to kind of clean up if he saw something else as well.
Yeah, and then one thing we did, so we had added this. We didn't, since we didn't get into the draft plan last time. I didn't mention that we had put some text in the draft plan to sort of address this issue of identifying which existing plans, which existing amendments to our comprehensive plan we were going to carry over. So we had added some language in there that said we were going to carry over the bicycle master plan, the pedestrian master plan, and then the 2008 Boneyard Creek master plan. We ran this by our city attorney, Matt Rushley, and he had a couple of minor changes to the text that we had in there. So basically it's saying that the new plan will incorporate those plans as elements of this plan, and then saying that updated versions of these plans that are adopted in the future will automatically be incorporated as elements of this plan. So the city attorney thinks that's I guess good way to go forth with it, if that's what we want to do. If there are other plans that we wanted to carry along in this plan, we could add them to the list, but I didn't really see any that jumped out at me.
And this way, in the future, instead of having to do an amendment when there's a new plan, it'll just automatically be included in Imagine Urbana.
Any questions about that?
In the before and after language are here.
Was the downtown plan left off just because it's too old at this point?
I can't even recall if the downtown plan was actually incorporated as an element of this plan. Are you talking about the 2012 downtown plan, or are you talking about the public realm study?
No, the older one.
The 2012?
Yeah.
That's a good question. You remember what section that's in? Yeah, I'm not sure if that was actually adopted as an element, but I can make a note to write that down.
Yeah, it looks like there's an ordinance that, well, it's listed in the amendments to the 2005 comprehensive plan online.
Okay. Then if that's the case, and if you want to carry that over, I think that would be a good thing to carry over, until we have something new. And I think if we added that here and then we came up with a new plan, it would just get incorporated automatically via this language. So I'll look into it. I'll make sure, but
I guess the only other one that's a plan as opposed to a policy that's specific to the city was the Crystal Lake Neighborhood Plan.
right.
And I have not looked at that recently, so I couldn't tell you, or couldn't say how valid it is.
Right. I haven't looked at it recently. It's my recollection that it's not super valid, but I can take a look into that too.
So it looks like there were several county plans that were adopted as amendments. How are we treating those, like the hazard mitigation plan and greenways and trails plans? Yeah,
I don't know, and I guess that's a good bit of discussion. I don't know, if we want to incorporate those into this plan, and I'm not totally sure how those actually fit in. I can say that, in my time here, I don't recall ever sort of pointing to those plans as reasoning for any decisions that we're making. Although it's possible that we have done that. But yeah, I'd need to give that some more thought too, probably.
Okay.
All right, and I'll try to report back on that next session. Okay, and then some other things, things that I've really worked on pretty exclusively was updating the matrix for the place types, so you all have printed copies in front of you. I also left some on the table in the back, so hopefully folks in the audience have grabbed those as well. So I updated that, and then also I made changes to the maps based on comments that I had received at last week's meeting, and I was able to work with our software vendor to figure out how to get higher resolution versions of those plans onto the draft plan. So I can kind of, it's pretty easy to do that, but I'll go ahead and pull those up just to show all the folks at home. So when you go to the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan, sorry, I'm going kind of fast. Okay, so here's the home page. You can either get there by going to the plan itself, or you can just go straight up to the maps section. And then in there, say you wanted to look at the place types map, we just go to that section if it pulls up. Maybe I need to wait. Or not. Yeah, that's odd. Let me try refreshing that. It was working earlier. Okay, that might be working. Okay. All right, so development opportunities. So I updated sort of these lower res versions that you can just see in the plan, but then you'll notice that it's got the little clicky finger icon indicating that if you click this, it will open something. So if you click that, it will open up a higher resolution version of the map. So once it's done loading, you can zoom in and see that it is quite high res, so it's nice. So, hey, now that I have this open, I'll just show you the couple of changes that I made. So I did add the UCSD pump station on here for reference, which we had talked about last time. And then I added sort of the undeveloped area south of the Pines as a development opportunity. I think those are the only changes that were called for. Yeah. So that's nice. It was nice to be able to get those higher res versions in there.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess I'll just go ahead and pull up these other maps to show you what we did with those. So this one, I think last time we kind of realized that this one probably still needs the most work out of any of them. It's also being kind of slow to load. But on this, I guess I can show this before I open up the bigger version, or I'll just open up the bigger version. There it is. So I think we didn't really like, or I really didn't like how things were, and I still don't like how things are set up into these things called potential and planned projects. And then previously they were just called like planned, down here it was called planned projects or something, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. So I kind of started separating them into different things. So I'm calling sort of the stuff we want to do pretty immediately priority projects. And I'll probably renumber these so they make more sense instead of, going from 3 to 11 with some numbers missing in there as they currently stand. But these are projects that are mostly, close to our downtown core or Lincoln Avenue. So we've done a couple of studies along there, as we've mentioned. So really, those are the things we want to prioritize. Taking the recommendations for the 2 Lincoln Avenue studies and doing something with those, and then doing the Florida Avenue, and then downtown Vine Street right out here, and Illinois Street, and then also looking at the Vine and Main intersection and looking at how we could make that intersection better. Then a couple of other things. I know we had talked a bit about the Mumford Drive extension. So I kept it on there. I changed the color of it, and I put it as the only low priority project, but we might add more low priority projects. But I did add a note on here. It keeps it on the plan, but I state right on the map that this area is owned by Sola Gracia Farms, which has made significant investments in the property. As such, there are no plans to extend Mumford Drive for the foreseeable future. I don't know if you have comments on that. I'm totally happy to change some things around or or what have you. But
Like,
And I
what
think
about
you're-
like on hold or something like that? I mean, isn't it really just not a project as long as they're operating?
pretty
as a
much, yeah.
farm?
Yeah.
At some point when they're not, it might become something again.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that's the point, is that, yes, if they did cease business, then this could come back.
Yeah. But I could word it a little less nebulously and more just direct, while they're farming it
Operation.
in operation, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just like, if we got through all of our priorities, then we could eventually do this. But
Yeah, yeah.
We wouldn't if they were still operating there.
Right. Okay, and then some other things on this map, just, you might miss them if you don't see them. I realize I didn't change this tiny arrow down here, but I did change the tiny arrows up here. So all of these blue arrows showing the extended streets, I made those just fatter by like 6 times or something. So they used to be pretty narrow. So those, so it's a lot clearer to see those. The other thing I did was made this update. So I took off those, the Olympian Drive and Lincoln Avenue, because those were completed. But I did then sort of add or alter this number 1, which is still, it was part of the longer vision last time. So now that's just the, what do we call it? Olympian Drive relocation and extension west from US Route 45. So I think that's all the changes to this map.
So I think there's something, for me at least, that's getting confusing, because I think there's stuff that's a holdover from the previous one.
Yeah.
And that's now in this, but it's not really explained. So, like, on the potential and plan projects, it goes 1, 2, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
Like that, the numbering is kind of weird. But
Yeah.
also, there's only 2 that have something other than a circle as the symbol.
Yeah.
And that symbol, those symbols are never explained why those are different. And I don't know if they need to be at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not totally sure. And well, the reason the numbering is weird like this is because I grabbed all of these from, they used to be down here, and I swapped some out from over here, swapped them out, I just did that today. I just didn't have time to clean anything up any more than that, but
Okay.
What
I will
about
do
the-
that.
the symbols there?
But yeah, so the symbol, I can kind of understand why this one's a triangle, because it matches the other symbols of, essentially it's saying this road might be extended out here, but it needs more study. This Anthony Drive one, I guess that's kind of like two triangles back to back and then joined in the middle. But yeah, I mean, we could think of better things to do. I mean, we could just show, that could just be a circle with
The
a line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. That would probably make more sense.
I think otherwise those triangles are in places where we're not saying there's any certainty about the alignment.
Right. Yeah. And then, one other thing these football shaped things up here that we had kind of put in a while back, I renumbered them because they were number 9 before, but that didn't make any sense anymore once I did some other things. But, yeah, those shapes are kind of weird as well. So we'll need to figure out what to do with those. But I think essentially we could probably just put a number, I don't know. Maybe we could,
What's in the legend? The legend has a triangle, right?
yeah, the legend has this that says direction and approximate location. The exact location of roadways and or right-of-way dedication shall be determined depending on factors including, but not limited to, proposed development plans, natural features, and safety needs.
Well, the purple footballs are really just two triangles back to back, aren't they?
Basically, yeah.
You could throw that in there.
Yeah.
It could be, so you could have a blue triangle or a purple football, and they both mean the same thing.
Yeah, so why not just blue triangles? Yeah, it's kind of, so this whole area is, we know that there's probably going to be, I'll just zoom in there. So this is sort of that, like Hope Village is going in right here, or there, yeah. It's on the north side of that, or maybe it's right here, actually.
The hand is.
Yeah. And then, yeah, this area is just going to be farmland for the foreseeable future. But, the Federal Drive comes down there, and then you've also got Goodwin that kind of terminates here. So the idea is that you'd probably want to extend the sort of the grid system here in some way. So I could probably throw in something that's kind of similar to this line over here connecting Brownfield and Airport, just saying something like, these two will probably connect, and then maybe add in some arrows on the side that show and it would probably go west as well. And then one other question I just kind of came up with earlier, which we don't need to figure out right now, but just kind of something to throw out there. So up in the northeast area up here, we've got a lot of these blue triangles that are saying extend the road grid in these areas, but you got the Saline Branch coming right through there, so I don't know. And I feel like some of these arrows are off too in some way. But you got, the Saline Branch cutting through all this, so does it make...
How feasible?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the concept is we would want some road connectivity in there in some way, but the Saline Branch, I don't think anybody is going to be building bridges over that out in a rural area. It's probably not worth the investment to do that, so I don't know. I was just thinking, I don't expect a grid system in that area, is all I'm saying. Okay, so I think that's about it for this map. But yeah, this needs some more work. I think Lou wanted to meet with me, and I think he had some ideas on this too. So might be a couple weeks before I come back with anything real substantive with this. But I can make some of the minor changes that we've talked about just to make it a bit more clear, number it better. I suppose we can go and take a look. Actually, I don't think I haven't made any changes to the place types map since last time. And since we've got the pretty fully developed matrix Maybe it'd be good to kind of go through that and get some feedback on there. But essentially, so if I can, let's see, let me just go to that. And I'm gonna, will that work? Yeah, that might be trying to export the whole thing, but maybe not. I kind of want just this whole section as a PDF, or I can. But basically, so some changes since last time. So last time I just had some residential sort of building types in the matrix. So I've added more to that. So the basic thing is it goes from sort of least intense type of development, sort of, up to sort of more intense. And there's probably some development types. I'm now calling them development types because once you get into talking about open space and parks and things, it's not really a building type. So that's a minor change.
The heading at the top.
Oh, down here. What? Oh, does it say? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to change that. Yeah, and there's probably some missing stuff. So that's one area of feedback I'd like to go through tonight. And then, as I pointed out last time, sort of we're indicating on this matrix on the right side, it has all of the different place types that we've defined for the plan, and then the green indicates what type of development would be pretty much, that would be acceptable in those different places. Pretty much if you're talking in a zoning way, it would be like a by right type thing. And then yellow is they might be okay to have maybe a limited number, or maybe you'd want to add some sort of, some sort of restrictions or something on them and not just allow them, to proliferate everywhere in that place type. So you see we starting with single houses, as we're now calling them, and then duplexes, accessory dwellings. So that's your things like, this example is sort of a garage with an apartment above it behind a house. And that would also be things like just a standalone, say a backyard cottage, or that's probably something we'd need to get into in greater detail. But again, this matrix is sort of just a guide to help us when we change our zoning ordinance in the coming years. So this is a policy. Again, the comp plan is a policy document. It's not a regulatory document. So this isn't going to actually make the changes by adopting this.
Well, I think it's also, there's many potential users of this. And I think like developers, this could be like a signaling device for developers as well. So,
yeah.
Which is why I think some of the terminology doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. For example, like the commercial plus residential.
Yeah.
Those are mixed use development types. So yes, it is commercial and residential, but I think we don't want, the message that we're trying to send is that these are building types where there is a mix of these uses in a single building, as opposed to you can have commercial and you can have residential.
Yeah.
In the same building, mix of use in the same building.
You can have commercial, or you could have residential on this particular development type. It's just confusing. It could be read as the scale is what you're really talking about there. So large commercial or large residential. But
gotcha.
I think it's pretty common. And certainly if we're trying to communicate to a variety of different people who would be looking at this, but certainly developers are one of those. And I think we'd want it to be clear for them to understand what we're looking for.
Yeah. So let me just go down to that one since we're talking about it. So are you saying just having something like well, there's these two that are sort of mixed use. So the downtown commercial and residential. I mean, and I don't even know if these are residential. Some of those are probably office space too. So yeah, it is mixed.
Yeah,
You just want to call it mixed use?
I would.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and we had some discussion at the last meeting. Yeah, what does mixed use mean? The jargon kind of thing, and then it was brought up. Somebody mentioned mix. It was mix of uses, and I didn't know if that's. Again, we're trying to make it plain to people that aren't familiar with terms. So
Yeah, but we also expect people who are very familiar with terms to look at this and be able to get something out of it. So
Yeah.
developers in particular, we don't want them to be confused about what we are stating our intentions are for these
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Well, and we also have the power to define mixed use in this online platform, and then just have it where people can see the definition if they click on the term. So
we should.
that's probably a good thing to add.
Can we go back to accessories?
Yeah.
Because I am curious about like where.
I probably should define
where,
that too.
Or if tiny houses would they fit if they're on someone else's property?
Yeah.
Or, converted, because, right, like, lots of people are doing the converted garages for extended families. Like, I guess, I'm trying to figure out that piece, because I know that that's been brought up in previous meetings. Yeah. Where
Yeah.
does that go?
Yeah. I think there's a couple things. So a tiny house would just, technically would just qualify as a single house. So it would be, according to this, that would be an appropriate thing to have in, either of our sort of neighborhood areas or rural residential or agriculture. If you wanted to put a tiny home on your lot that already had a regular size home or whatever you want to call it, then it would qualify as an accessory dwelling. Yeah. And that's a thing when we get into talking about accessory dwellings as part of our zoning ordinance rewrite, then we'll need to get into sort of those details. So yes, accessory dwellings include tiny homes or, just small extra homes in a backyard, but garage apartments or a basement apartment or things like that, or attic apartments. So we'd flesh that out when the time comes.
Is that a picture from Urbana, the accessory dwelling?
It is not. I know. So I just happened upon it when I was looking through a presentation from some planning conference that I'm guessing Marcus saved in our file somewhere. I had never seen it, but it had a lot of really good pictures, and that's from Denver.
We do have one in the plan, though, of the one that's in East Urbana. There's what is that, off of Illinois? Is that where that one is? And
there's
it's
a
actually in
few,
the plan,
yeah.
so we could pick that one up.
Yeah, we could definitely, there's definitely Urbana examples. A lot of, just as a bit of education, a lot of accessory dwellings that exist in Urbana predate the zoning ordinance and would not be allowed these days without some sort of zoning approval. But yeah, we do have some. Yeah, we could go out and take some photos of some Urbana examples, and that would be preferable. One thing I don't think we have examples of in Urbana is a triplex. So this one's from Chicago. That's just also known as a 3-flat, and you see those all over the place in Chicago. But I was just looking for sort of 3 units in one building. I think technically that qualifies as a small apartment building by building code, but just sort of wanted to, to give people an idea of something. Now for the quadplex, this looks smaller than the triplex, but it's actually it's right over here on Elm Street, and I know that one. I think that was built in like the 20s or 30s, and that's got 4 units in it. And you probably wouldn't even know walking by. And I think that's another thing that we'll want to convey going forward when we redo the zoning ordinance, is a lot of times people aren't so, they don't care so much about necessarily how many units are in something. They care about how big the building is, or how it looks. Because you could probably get a pretty bad looking 4-unit building that people would not want in their neighborhood, but something like this, it's pretty innocuous. All the parking's back behind it. Yeah.
Would it make sense for the next two categories, small apartment and mid-size apartment, to put a range of units in there? So obviously the small apartment goes from 5 units
More
to
definite.
something.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that as well. So yeah, we could do that, because I know this one has 7 units. And I don't even know if this one might be around the same. So these might not be the greatest pictures to do. This one looks maybe a little bit larger just because of the angle of the picture. But yeah, I'll make sure that we'll add unit.
Have a range.
Yeah, we'll add a range of units, and then also make sure that the mid-size apartment one actually makes sense. And do you have suggestions for the range of units, or? I mean, that one is 7 units, so maybe we could just say, up to 7 units or something like that. I don't know.
I would defer to our architects. We only have one here today, but if for a small apartment building, if we're looking for something that's 3 stories typically,
Yeah.
like how many units can you fit in a typical 3-story apartment building that's on a regular sized lot?
I don't know.
Okay.
So, and I will say, so this one is, I'm pretty sure it's let's see, 3 stories. It's 2 units per story, and then the guy who owns it and built it lives in a basement apartment. So he's got the whole basement floor for himself. So that's why there's 7 units, but it's only 6 units above ground. So
Maybe it's like 5 to 8 or something like that.
yeah. Okay.
Probably, I think like missing middle housing
Yeah.
.com or org or whatever. I think they have this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they probably do.
Of course.
I just also wonder if there would also be an occupancy, because it probably, how many units, but if they're all 3, hypothetically, like 2 or 3 bedroom
Yeah.
units, that's probably bigger than a 3-floor apartment, all single. It really
Right.
matters, right? And I think that they, particularly in a town like the Day,
Yeah.
like they could construct them in all kinds of curious ways where everybody gets,
So is it better to have number of bedrooms? Is that for the range versus units?
different, huge.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
May I ask, our zoning ordinance does include rooming house.
Yes.
And I don't see that as a development type here. We may not be promoting it, but I did run into a Champaign developer who is looking seriously at rooming house ideas. That is where the cooking facilities are minimal.
Yeah.
We've seen some of that on, it's almost that work share concept where people are living there and they're sharing, yes, a kitchen.
Yes.
They want to live independently, but yet they want to be in a kind of a more of a social group setting. We've seen some of that.
Adult dorm.
Yeah, adult dorm, that's a good way to put it.
So I guess
That's the better
this brings us into sort of the gray area between what what are we calling sort of a development type versus what is a use?
Yes, you're right.
So, because a lot of those rooming houses, back in the day, they were just houses, and then they've been, cut up into rooming houses, or a lot of the old houses have been cut up into apartments. So,
I'm comfortable with what we have
Okay.
here.
and then,
Question.
yeah,
With regard to, has there, I see this exercise as sort of reimagining, great term for
yeah,
reimagining how we might move into a zoning ordinance with significant changes. Do we risk confusing readers because of the similarity in overlap between our place types and zoning ordinance?
I don't know. Yeah.
Perhaps if in a preface we say really what we're doing with this, it might bypass confusion.
Yeah.
I hate to. I'm not confused.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I wrote sort of the very brief intro to this section, but I think I wrote it in one pass and haven't had any, haven't really looked at it again or gotten any feedback on it.
I
So,
found it very helpful. I was confused until I read that.
okay.
I found it satisfactory.
So if you think it's enough to not confuse people, then I'm fine going forward with it. But if there's ways that we can tweak it to make it better, I'm all ears. But I think, maybe we could tie it back so, it just says details will need to be worked out when the zoning ordinance is developed. I mean, maybe referring back to, hey, that's our big move too, or whatever,
Perhaps.
So, okay. All right.
And you to talk about place types?
We can,
That I'm
yeah.
confused. It looks like, and again, maybe these aren't place types, so, again, but it looks like we go from downtown commercial, but we don't have just a regular business type, like just a regular, I put store.
Yeah.
And we also don't have, and I don't know if it's because we're not developing, but we don't have things like strip malls or open mall. Like, I would assume, like, that model thing is all of these open malls.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we'd be creating those because we went straight to big box stores, but I would anticipate, I mean, when I'm driving down Urbana, there's a lot of different store types that aren't,
Right.
Walmart. And so it'd be nice to identify those store types,
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying. I think that's definitely the type of feedback we're looking for. And also it's just, I didn't add more commercial types because I had to get everything done and printed for the meeting. But no, that's good. Yeah.
I know you've looked at the Charlotte plan before, and I just pulled it up, and they have a one-pager that says, what are place types? And they describe it. So
Yeah, that's
just
good.
Take a look at that.
All right. I think I might have that printed out on my desk.
Justin,
So.
since you have that open, Kevin and I were talking about building type. We changed it to development type. What does Charlotte call that, or is there a comparison there?
I think what they call place types, it's a mix, really. Their grid has some things that are describing buildings, and then they have some things that are describing like neighborhoods. So it's not super coherent.
Not as black and
So
white, yeah.
Okay.
It's limited to what you can get out of it, but I think their paragraph about what are these
Place
things
steps.
is good.
Okay. All right, I'll take a look at that. Yeah, so
I have one small more comment. I think on page 5, there's a government building, and then there's like a word called industrial. I think maybe there was supposed to be a picture there.
that's the industrial is supposed to go with the next page.
That's
think
what I
it just
thought.
yeah,
Okay.
it just broke at a weird
Broke
spot.
poorly. Yeah.
Because, yeah, and there's a picture supposed to be there, right? Because you got large-scale manufacturing.
There's not. I was trying to do sort of like subheadings within the table, and it just broke that at a weird spot. One thing that was nice, I thought I was going to have to make a series of tables. As you can see on page 3, I actually split the table into 2, but now it has the same, so it's got the same heading in 2 spots on this. But then when you actually export it, it automatically gives you table headings on each page, so I'm just going to recombine them all into one master table, I think. Just a formatting note there. Yeah, so commercial types, as we just discovered, we need more of them. But again, sort of going on a continuum. So right now, if you want to have a business in your house, and you're not in an area where your homeowners association, say, doesn't allow that, you can do that anywhere. In the city, we have rules for it. They're in our zoning ordinance. If you want to do something really intense, then you got to actually get a conditional use permit. But if you want to, be a consultant who just works from home, you can. I mean, you should be able to do that by right. So you can do that, by right. So that we're just carrying that over and just making that sort of explicit. Sort of the least intense type of business is just kind of working from home. And then we go, so you've got sort of old houses that have been converted into businesses. This is the idea of the mixed office residential district, but there actually really aren't any, I think, aside from the Timothy John Salon on Green Street, which was just a commercial building, and it's been there since like the 60s. There's never been one of the old houses on Green Street that's been converted to a business. So that's just, is a good idea to make that district. I think it's worked well in other ways, but not to develop these type of businesses. But that's an aside. The image I chose here is the close-knit knitting store along Springfield Avenue, because that's just a good example of taking an old house, turning it into a business. So that's kind of the next step up in intensity. That was the original picture that I had used here, but I think that one's like a slightly more intense version of a home-based business, because I think this one here, close knit, is actually like nobody lives there. It's just used as a business. That Green Yoga Spa or whatever, that I'm pretty sure that somebody lives there, and then they just also have their business. So it's kind of like in between these two things. Yeah. And then I added a corner business. I'm not sure if this Espresso Royale is the best one, but I think it's pretty good to show that. And then I guess this one I called a small neighborhood store is kind of like a corner business. It's on a corner, so it's just sort of a little different version.
Do we need to
Sorry. I just think about the small neighborhood stores as being where I get like candy, snacks, treats.
Yeah. So, and now here we are, like getting pulled back into the whole use conversation, because it's, this could, like, we don't know, let's say we don't know what what Secondhand Rose there is used as. Yeah, let's say we don't know it's an antique store. You could easily see that being converted into just like a regular corner store too. So
How are we differentiating corner versus neighborhood? It seems like the
I-
corner is also neighborhood.
I think those are the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you notice that I gave the same colors to the cells for both of them because it's like, okay, yeah. So yeah, those are probably combined.
yeah. I'm getting a little concerned that covering every possible version of this could start to look like a use table,
Yeah.
as opposed to taking an approach that was more like tied to the place type. So it could be just neighborhood commercial or commercial corridor or like kind of like strip commercial, something like that.
Yeah.
Commercial on a corridor. Yeah, I feel like that then we're going to get into this thing of like trying to make sure that every single possible permutation of
Right.
this gets represented, and then we'd end up a really
And
long.
you're always going to
Yeah.
omit something.
Yeah.
Um,
So that would be my suggestion, is to step back a bit
Maybe
from.
less is more. Or,
Yeah.
Maybe an explanation in the preface, just to say, these are suggestions of development types. And we don't mean for it to be exhaustive.
But as Dustin said, like, I like the idea where we see this as like communication to like both neighbors, residents, but also developers about the kinds of things that people could consider and explore. And so I like that broad lens.
All
One
right.
type that I don't see
Like
anywhere.
mall.
Like what?
Like mall.
Ah.
That would be
yeah.
nice.
The one type that doesn't show up anywhere is office, I don't think. And then the other, like we've talked a lot about like kind of office/commercial uses that maybe in the past would have been considered industrial or light industrial, but now we're considering them something else. So something that gives a sense of what would one of those look like, or do
Right.
you have an example of something like
Yeah,
that?
I was thinking of that earlier and trying to figure out what. I couldn't think of any local examples that I could pull while I was pulling images from Street View for some of these. So,
excuse me. What we used to call light industrial, is that
Yeah.
what you're looking at?
Yeah, like it could be a lab,
yeah.
or something tech-related manufacturing.
Yeah,
But that's
okay.
not like heavy polluting industry. kind of
Right.
stuff.
So is that a development type or is that like a use?
Well, that's, yeah, no, I'm trying to, well, but then some of these, like shipping and logistics, are those development types or uses?
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I know. It's tough.
So I'm trying to, it's not, I think you could do it, you could step back one level of abstraction, I guess, or specificity from this,
Yeah.
and it could capture more than just warehouses, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Go to that one.
On the fly, I'm not coming up with something, but
Right.
other than just like the heavy light binary, but I
Yeah.
think we wanted to move away from the light because we don't want it to be, have all of the baggage that comes along with that.
So I have a question. For example, a place like on university, I think there's a place called Aero Glass, and how would you think about that type of use?
I mean, it would be manufacturing because that's what they.
It also has a storefront, so it's a place.
Retail and manufacturing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a place people will go get their glass made, and it's also, I think they do a lot of the work on their site.
Yeah, so I don't know, because that's That seems like a sort of a use. It's like a use thing. So yeah, I don't know.
So that kind of fit into what, maybe not necessarily fit into what you're talking about in terms of a lab, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking like what we're trying to describe are development types, which are essentially building types, but maybe some sense of like setbacks and things like that. Like
Yeah.
a picture at least. So what is that, right? It's like a 1-story or 2-story building.
yeah, so when I was looking at this light in the industrial, I think it's too, it doesn't really reflect the industrial landscape. It's a little bit too stereotypical, but there are a lot more to industrial than these two are representing. So finding another example can be good.
Yeah. I think these are all light industrial type things, but we were just trying to
Right.
get away from that name because of the connotation of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I haven't come across anything that I've seen how that's described in a different way.
I wonder if the confusion related to use versus development type, and we're stressing the development types, and if there's something again in the preface that might say there's a world of uses, and we're not trying to say which uses go where.
Yeah.
I don't know, just to, well,
We are trying to say some places.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What could be
Yeah, but
like, I'm looking at the Charlotte one, and they have something called suburban office commercial, which is where I would think a lot of these kind of light industrial things that we're talking about would be.
yeah.
But I don't like calling things suburban here
Right.
because it doesn't really describe the form. But I think we need something to modify just office commercial.
Tell me that one again.
Yeah.
What-
Suburban office commercial.
Suburban.
Yeah.
I like the form-use distinction, and we're describing forms that go in places.
Yeah, and I think something like suburban office commercial describes a form, except that I don't like the
How it's-
buyer of suburban for
Yeah.
Right.
our office commercial. But
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was kind of thinking.
low,
What
you know,
about
low intensity, or I don't know, like,
micro urban?
I mean, I was just thinking like it feels like we have sort of general like broad categories. It's like stuff you drive to or like stuff you walk to. And like you know, like that's kind of the form that a lot of these things take. So it's like, you know, I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah.
Stuff you sleep in, stuff you don't sleep in.
I think neighborhood is a good adjective for a lot of like neighborhood commercial or neighborhood something else.
Yeah.
I think that works well. I'm just not happy with suburban. I think we need to come up with something better
Yeah.
for that. But
Sorry, I was just thinking like neighborhood rendering plant or something.
But the example that Chinchi said about Aero Glass, that's really not in a neighborhood, you know, so it doesn't fall into that neighborhood commercial.
no, it'd be commercial corridor. It could be commercial office corridor. I mean, most of these are on corridors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
But if they're not all on corridors, then that wouldn't work either. So
Yeah.
But I can imagine that there's that office or business development defined by, again, can you walk to it, or can people, or how disruptive it would be, because there are certain, if you were doing a lot of welding and, right, like I think about that glass, if you couldn't soundproof it, you wouldn't want to be in some place where that was highly residential, but it would make sense, right, like it would make sense of those kind of businesses that could be some level of manufacturing and retail are together, and they could be
Yeah.
next to a grocery store or whatever, and people would be okay with that.
Yeah.
I would say try commercial corridor and see if it fits with all of the places on the map.
Like try it how? Like what do you?
Just see if,
Well, just all
are
of
there
the
examples
places.
that fall outside of
Yeah.
that?
So for the place types, what's ML?
Manufacturing and logistics.
That's not the one. Well, I mean, we don't have the commercial on here, so I can't see which ones it would be in, but
No.
Like-
Oh. Yeah.
like whatever the color of the university area that Jinshi was talking about, what is that currently
Yeah. I think that's let me.
called?
let me
Commercial,
pull that
isn't
up.
it?
Yeah, I think that's just called commercial. Let me pull that up. Wait for my high res one to download here. But yeah, it looks like along University Avenue. I'm pretty sure that's commercial,
Yeah.
but it might be. Yeah, I'll just wait till it pulls up.
And-
But then we get into this thing of what's currently there versus what we might want to see in the future. So, I mean, I think is that like between Cunningham? Is it like west of Cunningham and then like over near Carl? Is it along that? Like over, or where's the?
I don't know. The colors are too hard to see on my map.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to changing those yet.
Maybe we don't really have a issue here because let's think about Cunningham Avenue, the auto dealership, the oil change places. They are all just part of commercial. It's just that our current commercial is so geared towards just fast, like home goods consumption, food related, but there are a lot of other type of commercial is commercial, like the Aeroglass. It is kind of a type of commercial. So if we just have all those in commercial and leave the industrial to be what it is shown here, it seems to be fine as well.
Yeah, I think we're not talking about changing the color that they're coded as.
No, I'm talking about we're talking about this map. So just like what Karen was talking about, the current type of commercial, like you have a whole page, more than one page, describing very small little things here, but you're not representing all the auto-related commercial. Those are a huge part of the landscape here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking about calling like commercial corridor or
Corridor.
something like that.
Mm-hmm. So it will be a place type, it will be a development type under commercial or
Correct,
under
correct.
industrial?
Yeah,
Commercial.
under commercial. What if we called it corridor commercial, not commercial corridor?
Yeah.
I mean, because I think it's it's a type that's along these corridors, right? Yeah. So I just zoomed in on this map. So I think we haven't really gotten into tons of detail on looking at this map yet, but I think, is the aero glass along here sort of like, let's see, here's, oh, is it way out here somewhere? Okay, gotcha. Yeah. All right, so that makes sense. I just wanted to point out the grand vision for, you know, just south of Crystal Lake Park. This is all pretty, like there's apartments and things there, but then when you get along University Avenue, it's very corridor commercial type stuff. But I think in the future, it would make sense to sort of capitalize on the proximity to the park and make that a little more, you know, walkable, as they say. Okay. Well, I think I've got some good feedback on on the matrix thus far.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe I got a bit too crazy with the open space types, because there's a lot. Where did that even go? Oops, I shouldn't have done that. Okay. Yeah, so I was like, oh yeah, there's pocket parks, which is like just small parks you can fit into small areas, and playgrounds and cemeteries in the middle. I feel like that should probably be at the end, because
That's where it goes.
but yeah, I mean, I feel like these are, and this is the reason I changed it from building type to development type, because once you get into talking about open spaces, it's like, well, these aren't building types. I don't know. Public pools, I don't know. I can pare these down if you would like. Yeah, and if you if you read the description for green spaces and recreation, I think we talk sort of about, well, I don't know if it says much about mixed use, but let's see. Yeah, I guess the description doesn't get into it too much, but the so yeah, for land uses, it says primarily public parks, trails, golf courses, recreation areas, open spaces, and cemeteries. Some ancillary commercial uses may be compatible in some places. Yeah, I mean, so green spaces, at least in my conception, you know, you might have like a concession stand or something if you have sporting facilities or. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It is not like it would.
Yeah, so I think that's probably just like sort of a matter, I guess even though these are open, you know, open space types or whatever, there is sort of a form and a size to it. So yeah, sometimes you have big recreation facilities. So I wonder if we just have something like that in here, because you could have like a small natural recreation area, like, and that could fit perfectly into a neighborhood. But then if you have something like Meadowbrook Park, it's like, okay, well, that is a whole different thing. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I just know if we were talking to people who are developing green space and parks,
Yeah.
they are trying to create as many different utilizations for the facilities so that, I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so, yeah, and that's sort of when creating the map of the place types, we've got certain areas that have typically been defined long ago that are really large areas of sort of that qualify as green space and recreation. And then if you're in like a neighborhood or something and you just have a small little park, like I don't think that needs to be painted as sort of this with this big or sorry, as a place type of green space and recreation. It's like, if you have a healthy neighborhood, you should have some of these things sort of mixed in anyway. So, yeah, I'm
Sorry,
just freestyling
I
here,
hear
but
you,
yeah.
You know, but a lot of times, if, again, you know, like, there would be a playground and a basketball court. I
Yeah.
guess I want to say, like, I think that may be just going back to rethink, you
Yeah.
know, just drive around and be like, you know, and just think about some of Urbana parks. Almost always, there is a something and a something in every single Urbana park that there's, except for those pocket parks, which I think are interesting legally, right? Because you can fine people for all kinds of things if they're on those little parks, and it's a great legal thing.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm smoking marijuana on a little pocket park, there's a higher fee. So just as a, you know, I'm just I'm just telling you, pocket parks are unique, but really to
Yeah.
think about how, you know, we're thinking about development, and I think really
And maybe-
having a conversation with how people who are doing that work are envisioning it. It's generally not very siloed.
And maybe it's more, you know, it's almost a complex, a recreational complex or something like that.
Or just recreational area.
Yeah.
Well, he had the natural
Yeah.
recreation area, and
Guess we need an unnatural recreation area.
or maybe it's outdoor recreational and indoor or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's room.
Got-
Yeah, there's room
you
for
have something to
improvement.
go on
Well,
for
yeah,
that,
we'll give it some thought. All right. Okay. Cool. That's what we're here for. But yeah, I think this. I'll come up with some ideas around this sort of the concept of sort of like size, because yeah, we might be able to sort of pare this down and just have it. Yeah. Okay. Good.
Good feedback nonetheless.
Okay. Well, I can.
I also
get out
I
of
don't think
that.
this needs to be perfect before our
Right.
first public meeting. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we just need to have something that people can react to.
Yep,
So-
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, this is good. I appreciate all the reaction tonight too. Okay. Cool. So I think I went through the maps and stuff. So I guess we're ready to sort of just. We haven't really talked about the plan writ large for a long time. It still has, you know, essentially the structure has been there since we started talking about it. You know, back at the end of last year.
And we've made modifications since the draft in August. That was the previous draft, and so this draft now has incorporated much of that discussion that we've had over the past 3 months, and we just need to discuss, you know, have we captured, you know, what that discussion has been? Are there still areas that, you know, require some additional verbiage, you know, to make things clear? Just like that kind of feedback. And I know no one, at least as of earlier today, no one had made any comments on the online version. If that's, you know, from the Plan Commission, if that's not something you feel comfortable, if you want to, you know, send us, you know, a scratched up copy, red line, you know, whatever is easier, you know, we'll accept comments any way you can give them to us. We just, you know, want to make sure that, you know, you've looked at it and, you know, it's either satisfactory or you'd like us to see us work on certain sections.
Any comments on the overall plan document?
And we have on the agenda then for, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but for the 6th meeting, you know, if we could really have comments and get that finalized, and again, nothing's final, but at least from the Plan Commission's input, if we could have all that in advance of that meeting, it would be helpful so that we could have that final draft discussion at that time if you're not prepared to get into that detail tonight.
I have a couple things that are kind of broad
Good.
and not like, you know, specific places where I would make edits. But so one of the things, so the basis for a comprehensive plan should be an analysis of the existing conditions. So looking at demographics and change in demographics and land use, you know, kind of like the development opportunities map that we did, that kind of thing. Infrastructure, conditions, that kind of stuff. So there's that portion that is part of the basis, and then the public input. And I think the plan as it's currently written does a really good job of emphasizing the public input, but not so much the role that the analysis of the existing conditions played. So, for example, one of the big move number one, so address Urbana's diverse housing needs. And it says in the first paragraph that, people said Urbana needs more housing, which, great, they said Urbana needs more housing.
Yeah.
But we can also say that there is data showing that, there's this many percentage of people that are rent burdened or whatever. So I think I don't think it's a black, like either or. One is more important as the sort of factual basis for the content of the plan. But when we can back up, what people said with data that shows that these are real things, it might be the case that no one said anything about something that the data shows is a real problem, right? And so that doesn't mean that we ignore what the existing conditions analysis showed us, right?
So, Dustin, and again, I know you're talking about Examine Urbana, that data that we have. So are you suggesting that we have that in the appendix, and so we didn't want to, our original thought was to try to keep the plan itself as brief as we could and then reference some of those documents that we've had. But what I'm hearing is you'd possibly like us to take some excerpts and put it into the text?
I think it needs to be woven throughout the plan in terms of how, because there's little places especially when we're talking about the big ideas and the big moves, there's kind of like a justification for why this is in the plan, and thinking about what that justification is and where it comes from, because I think it just makes it more powerful and legitimate if it comes not just from the public input, but it also comes from the analysis of the data of the existing conditions in the city. And that relates to one of something else that I saw, which is, you kind of just hit on it, there's a link, it describes the Examine Urbana, and it provides a link to take you to that. But I think it would be useful if in that section, you just highlight a few key takeaways of the Examine Urbana. Just the way that this is structured. If this was set up as a comprehensive plan that was living entirely online, and there were a bunch of hyperlinks and tabs, and navigating around the site, maybe that would make a little bit more sense. But this is kind of like a weird hybrid where a lot of it just looks like a traditional plan that you would see in a PDF, but it just happens to be online. So most people are probably not going to click through to the Examine Urbana and look at all of the detail in that. So if in this document there is a few bullet points that summarize the key takeaways from that relate to the big ideas and the big moves in particular, then I think that would just, again, make it a stronger argument for what's in the plan.
I'm just envisioning, I agree, I'm just trying to envision, where the best, we've got to do some thinking about that. I understand what you're saying, and it sounds like we almost need to do that per section. You can't just have all of that at the front, like a summary of Examine Urbana. I think what you're really saying, you need to tie it into the different
it's not
sections.
a huge amount of text, but I think the first thing is to figure out what the key takeaways are and think about what you're highlighting in terms of what ends up being the big ideas and the big moves. And then once you have that, when you get to those sections, because it's like if you look at the Address Urbana's diverse housing needs, and it says, the whole basis of what's in there seems to be that people said Urbana needs more housing. Well, that's true, but then, and our analysis of the existing conditions showed that X, Y, Z, right? So it's just little bits that can be inserted into.
So would you, again, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
how, the how part I'm struggling with. From what you just said, like in the introduction to the big move, tie it in there. Do you
Yeah.
think that's the place to
Yeah.
put it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. We can kind of review this and sort of just ask, like ask the question in our heads while we're reviewing this. Like, okay, why? What backs this up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
We made this statement. What backs this up? Right.
exactly.
And some of it, yes, it's people said this. That is definitely something that backs it up. But then it's, do we have data or something that also backs it up?
Because
Yeah.
you're right, we typically, like this first one is a great example, move one, people said, not data said.
Yeah.
Right.
People said, and yeah, we're missing that the
Yeah.
other side. I agree.
You were going to say something, Karen? Or
I can go next. I was just thinking of a strategy, like so a strategy that we use when writing grants
Yeah.
is that we have to provide both data, and we have to provide like needs analysis based on consumer input. So maybe thinking about like a grant style
Yeah.
where you say, well, this is the state of what all of, concrete stuff. And we've also interviewed people, we've talked to people, and it's sort of a nice balance. And you keep it, right, like generally there's a word count, so generally you
Yeah.
don't provide all the data, but it sort of says both and. So that's
Okay.
always a great strategy, I think, about how to approach this.
Yeah, I like that. Yep. Dustin, I really, spot on. I mean, that's something that needs to be highlighted. And, I think we, in our process, we were so focused on making sure we heard voices. And that was real critical, as part of the initial process. But yeah, there's
can't
the
ignore
other
the
side,
data.
yeah.
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 I mean, if no one said anything about housing,
Yeah.
and it turns out that 80% of the people in the city are rent burdened, we clearly have a housing problem,
Yeah.
irregardless of what people
Right.
said about
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, another example, when we were out doing door to door, during that time frame, there'd been, instances in the media where it was, public safety was a concern. But when we went door to door, they didn't mention it. And it was like, well, my neighborhood's fine. Even if it didn't matter what neighborhood they're in. So you're right, it's that perspective, and you don't always have the true picture.
Yeah.
Good point. Well
You were going
taken.
to say something, Mr. Rose? Okay.
I have a question, which I think it's been a question we've had for a really long time, so I want to just go to it and ask the question. Is this piece that says events that have shaped Urbana since 2005 useful? Should it be in the plan? Like we asked ourselves this question like 6 months ago, and we're not sure. So any feedback, you don't have to provide it now, but
I don't know that it needs to be a timeline. I think maybe a paragraph that, again, asks the question, like, why does this matter, and
Yeah.
what has been the impact, which is, another one of my, I think this was a comment that I made in the original draft, which shortly after this section, there's the section about background and trends, and there's the trends affecting local government, which I don't think I've ever asked this, but I think these are just like trends affecting local government in general.
yeah.
And some of my comment consistently, I think, on the first draft was that we need to explain how these are relevant to Urbana and if they're relevant. So some of them include things about Urbana, but, aging population and retirements have reduced the size of the labor pool. Yes, that is a broad problem of things,
Yeah.
challenges that we're facing in the country. But what's the scope of that problem in Urbana, right? How relevant is that problem to Urbana? I'm not saying it's not, but just
Right.
Yeah.
tying that to
Well, and
Urbana specifically in some way.
in
I
some
think.
cases, I don't know that we know those answers,
Okay.
specifically. Just like the housing, one of the the big moves and little moves is to do a housing study because we don't know that information. So yeah, we
I
all
would say that, like, you know, these are some trends that we're aware of, and we want to know if these are things that we should be worried about in the city, and maybe that gets fit into a little move somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then something like the question you asked is on said handout. Champaign County older adults needs assessment, and there's a whole little housing bubble, so it,
There you go.
it might be available.
yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, that's good. So, Dustin, do you think we could condense sort of this down into something that's more narrative?
The only other purpose that, to me, this serves is it does show that over the last 20 years, a lot of things have happened, you know, for whatever reason. And hopefully it's showing progress, you know, from 20 years ago. But
Yeah.
it makes people understand, oh, wow, this did happen or that did happen. And
I found it useful in that it illustrated what events what scale of events are significant in Urbana. And some of the things, I mean, some of the things that are called out, you know, didn't seem like such big deals, and in a way that is the history of Urbana that we're laying out there, and in a way it was a little bit comforting that the big accomplishments are of a very a very human scale. In that way, I found it useful. It may take up more space than it needs.
So I would say I really like it. Like the other part of the document, when you're reading it, you can put it on any other city. It's like, I don't see Urbana there. These few pages, I see Urbana there. It makes me feel like, okay, this is a plan for Urbana.
okay. Well
But
taken.
what Dustin saying that pulling some of the insights from data from Imagine Urbana to boost up your big move section will make it feel more Urbana. Otherwise,
Urbana,
it would
yeah.
just be
Well,
something that's like,
and that ties in, I think, with what Bill's saying. Yeah, it's relative. I mean, in other communities, these wouldn't be possibly notable, and for us,
This is
these
us.
little small victories are what we're all about.
yeah, I
but-
have been living here since 2007, and looking at all this event feels like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, comforting.
I want to concur with what Ms. Sim said, that I think it would be worthwhile to take the Examine Urbana document and cull it for any data that can be used to stand in support of the claims that are made in Imagine Urbana.
Yeah, definitely. Very good input.
So I just want to be sort of cognizant of everybody's time. I think we've still got folks in the audience that came out, so I want to make sure that we give them some time to speak.
I have
If they
one,
have
one
comments.
more like broad thing
Yeah,
that I would
yeah.
say. That it's just more something that I just think needs more work, and so it's not that we don't have to spend a lot of time discussing it. But the metrics, in particular the barometers of success,
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more of an attempt to explicitly tie them to the particular big idea, in the sense that if we are seeing progress in this barometer of success, in this metric,
Yeah.
then we are progressing in the big idea. So Urbana is a place for everyone. How do we know if Urbana is becoming more of a place for everyone, or if it is living up to this ideal of being a place for everyone? the results of the community life survey, maybe, I don't really know what's in that or what that is asking, but I guess that's potentially
Yeah.
a good one. But rent burden by subgroup, not sure that just
Yeah.
statement alone doesn't seem like a really strong connection to, if we're saying that what is keeping Urbana from being a place for everyone is that not everyone can afford to live here, then that's definitely a good metric, but I don't see that described anywhere.
Yeah.
But that
So-
was our most difficult one to find barometers of success because it means different things to different people, that it's a place for everyone. And so any input from this group would be much appreciated because we struggled with that, trying to figure out, you know, when somebody drives into Urbana and it feels right for them, whatever feels right for them could be something totally different than the other person that it feels right to. And so it was difficult to pin that one down. The others were more explicit, but a place for everyone is such a subjective
Well, I might
feeling.
strike that, and then let's try and think of something
Yeah.
else that would be better for that one. But in general, I found that at least the text description of the metrics were sometimes, I mean, we talked a lot about making things accessible and easy to understand. A lot of times the metrics are written, and I don't know if this is
Yeah.
just like, these were placeholders, or if this is the final, finished product, but they're written in a way that it's sometimes hard to understand exactly what's being measured, and it's also sometimes hard to understand what progress would be. So would it be?
Can you give me an example just to, so
Yeah.
we know where you're coming from? Why isn't this?
I don't know. Probably too many people looking at it.
Probably not right
just
now in
need
the
to refresh.
meeting, but I'm happy to sit down and go
Okay.
over.
Okay, that'd be
these.
great.
Yeah. All right. I wanted to, so before we get to public comment and such, I just wanted to throw out, so I know we had talked about sort of timeline last time. This is kind of small here. I think I can zoom. Okay, this is March. So here we are, February 27th. So we'll be meeting again. We have a regular meeting next week. I'm bringing a very small text amendment. So we do actually have a case next week, but hopefully that'll go pretty quickly. And then we'll have another study session here. The following week, we are opening the public hearing for Imagine Urbana, as we had talked about last time.
And then-
We
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, we are sending out flyers, so now that we have the date for sure, we've worked with our postcard company. We're going to get those out in the next day or two. So everybody will get those.
Yeah, they're actually being printed now, and so we hope that they're in the mail either tomorrow or Saturday, that they'll start going out. So everybody will get them at least a week in advance. And in addition to that, the neighborhood groups will be receiving a notification. If there are groups that you specifically know of, that send them to me via email, Kevin, and just make sure that they're on our list. But he also mentioned flyers. We want to put flyers in some of the public places. Of course, the library. The like the wellness center. Places that the public can go to, and then of course our social media, and just trying to get the word out in as many venues as we can. So, but the postcard's going out to a little over 19,000 households in Urbana.
Yeah, so opening the public hearing on the 13th. We do have, I know that the 20th is spring break, and I know some folks won't be here. We do want to have a meeting still that day in case, if people can't make the 13th, and the public hearing will, of course,
Carry it
remain open until the commission makes a recommendation. But we would still like to have a meeting on the 20th, just to give folks more opportunity to come and speak. And then, of course, this is all tentative. We're looking at a special meeting on the 27th, where that's probably the first date where you might be able to make a recommendation to City Council. I mean, that's only 4 weeks away, so that might be asking a lot, but that's, you know, probably the earliest that we could do that.
And realizing that as we get public input, we'll be incorporating that into the document itself. So we'll do that as we go and keep you abreast of what those changes would be.
What happened to our idea that we discussed about doing a public hearing and then having council do their study session and then us having our second public hearing?
So we did talk about that. The process they need to have a recommendation from Plan Commission, and it needs to go to the Committee of the Whole before they then have their study sessions. And what we're talking about is they're going to have special, it hasn't been set up yet, but rather than having it as part of the normal meeting process, they're going to have special study sessions just for Imagine Urbana once they get the recommendation from Plan Commission. So might be a series of meetings that the council has, and they were talking about having them on Thursdays, so it could definitely dovetail with Plan Commission as well.
Okay, so procedurally, it's not possible to do what we were talking
Yeah,
about?
to mix them back and forth,
Okay.
the process needs to have a recommendation first.
So that will be Thursdays after the 27th?
Yes.
Correct. Starting the week of April 7th, possibly.
Okay.
The normal Committee of the Whole would be on the 7th that day, but what they're thinking about, there's other things on the agenda, so they'd really rather have separate meetings focused just on Imagine Urbana.
So like, we have a Thursday the 6th, is that what you're saying?
Sorry, what?
In April, is that what you're referring to now?
Yeah. I'm just trying, okay, so these don't conflict with Plan Commission meetings, I guess is what I was trying to check.
Those meetings haven't been set yet.
Yeah, we haven't set
Yeah.
those yet.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, in general, they'll be on days when we don't have a Plan Commission meeting.
Well, we were thinking about having them on Thursdays and inviting the Plan Commission to come and be sort of, be here to
Part of that
to
dialogue.
be part of that, because that would be useful for the.
But if you have
the
other
council
thoughts, if
to
you'd
hear.
rather not, have them on those dates, we'll certainly make that recommendation.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And no, it's more just if there's other
Well,
Plan
yeah.
Commission business that
Right.
has a timeline attached to it. that-
Yeah. I don't think we have anything in the hopper. We actually might have something else on the 20th, possibly. But that would be before those committee meetings, so.
Okay.
Nothing else that I know of in the hopper. Okay, but that's sort of the timeline, and then so we'll see what we can do. Just real quickly, I mentioned next week text amendment, and then another study session. But I think that wraps up.
And again, if on the 13th, if we could, have everybody really look at the draft and provide us feedback, that would be very helpful, so that night we could actually have we hope to provide you one in advance of that, if we'd have the comments, a few days before, so that we could get them incorporated and make sure we can really look at a complete revised draft at that time.
All right, but I think we can vacate our seats if
Okay.
anybody else wants to come up, so. For those of you at home, the question from the audience was just confirming that March 13th will be the opening of the public hearing for the Imagine Urbana Comprehensive Plan. 7 p.m., City Hall, 400 South Vine Street, Urbana, Illinois, 61801.
So the one thing that I didn't hear in the list of things that you were going to do for outreach was to appear on WCIA or do an interview with the News Gazette.
I mean, if they wanna talk to us, we will. Yeah, I mean, so we have Bridget Broyan is our public relations professional here with the city. So I know that, or I think Andrea may have talked to her today about sort of doing outreach stuff.
We'll have a press, is that on? We'll have a information release sent out to all the media and encourage that. I mean, you never know what their schedules are, but yeah, we'll definitely be reaching out and making sure that they're aware.
Okay, great. All right, so at this point in our study session, we'll invite anyone from the audience who would like to come up and provide any comment on anything they've heard or anything they've read or seen in the draft comprehensive plan.
Yeah, if
sure.
you have comments or questions or anything, please, yeah, you can send them to me. I guess the city recently got new email addresses, so you don't need to know my middle initial anymore. It's just kevin.garcia@urbanail.gov. Our old ones will still work for a while though, so if you have my old email address, you can send it there too. And then also, you know, if you look at the plan online, there is, if you look, and it's still on the screen here, in the upper right, there's the how to comment button. That'll tell you how to comment. So if you have comments directly on the plan, you can just do it right in there too. Yeah, and those comments will only be seen by staff who have access to it. So it's not just sending your comments out there for everybody to see.
All right. Any last thoughts or comments from the commission? Then we are adjourned at 8:46. Thanks, everyone.